Hello class, hope this video finds you well. I just finished editing down the color reduction Silkscreen project. I just wanted to take a minute to show you what I'm working with in my home studio. I have a little space set up where I can work. You can see I got my camera, that's where I set my camera up, my Silkscreen table, inking table. So really close quarters in here. I'm lucky to have this space. I love this space. It's a little bit of a wreck right now because of all the videos and things I'm doing in this room, plus my own work. So just a heads up on the video that you're about to see, the demonstration that you're about to see. It's not something you should probably do in just one whole shot. You know, you want to give yourself some breaks. I want you to do 10 really good prints. So that means you want to start with maybe 13 or 14 prints to start with. Because this is a reductive print, there's no going back. So if you're bound to maybe possibly lose a couple prints on the way. So you need to start with more so you end up with a larger amount of prints at the end that are in the addition. Is there anything else I want to add? I think the video is pretty thorough. I think it'd be best to watch the entire video first and take notes on the video while the video is playing, because there's a lot of tips and things, and there's also some trials and tribulations that happen during the video that I think you can learn from. And just take good notes, and I want you to send me your progress pictures. I'll be sending you information on how I want you to do that. And we're going to put this will be due in a week. Okay, so a week from Thursday. So have fun with the assignment. If you have any questions or you need any troubleshooting, you can always send me an email and I'll get back with you, and I'll be able to help you as much as I possibly can, just like we were in class. All right. Have a good weekend. Bye. Okay, so we are making a 4-color color reduction silkscreen. So what I have before you here, this is my design that I'm going to do. I have this broken down with using a highlighter or highlighters, the pink, orange, yellow, and the black. The reason why I have this marked off this way is because I want you to be able to visualize the thinking that goes into doing a color reductive. Really, I just need this as my setup sheet for my tracing onto the screen, which we're going to get to in just a moment here. But what I want to show, and what my plan is with this design, is I really want to work light to dark. Okay? You can work a little bit in between, and you can work dark to light, but that's my first instinct, is I want to go light to dark with this. So what I mean by that is black, it's definitely got to be the last color. This yellow is not going to print on top of the black. So right now I'm mostly concerned about all my outside edges. Okay, I'm going to print everything's going to be a solid color on the first run. So my plan right now is I'm probably going to print everything in yellow, right? I'm going to make all my prints, and then right after that I'm going to stop out and fill in areas on the screen where I do not want the yellow to print anymore. And then I'm going to print the orange. And then I'm going to do that same process again of stopping out and filling in the screen with the screen filler and the drawing fluid method, which I'm going to show you here in a bit. And then I'm going to print everywhere where I do not want the yellow or the orange to show through. And then I'm going to print the pink. And then lastly, I'm going to stop out everything except for the tarantula, and then I'm going to print that. So 4-color print means I'm going to go through 4 different impressions of printing. So here's my sketch. You want to make sure that your sketch fits onto your screen. You want to make sure that you have plenty of room around the edges. You really need about 2 inches from the frame. And the reason why is if it's too close to the frame, the ink's going to want to run out. It's not going to want to make a good contact with the paper, essentially. All right, so getting started here, I'm going to position my image. So I really need to focus on where this is and where the bottom is. And I'm just going to center that in the middle of my screen. okay? I can tape it to the back of the screen, or I can just lay my screen right on top of it. This is fine. I'm gonna trace using a really dulled down number 2 pencil, okay? So you wanna make sure that you're not using like a mechanical pencil, because you don't want to rip the screen. You want something that you can just draw on the screen like this, right? See how I'm drawing off to the side? Real nice and soft. Okay, let me just zoom in and show you. Yeah, see, it's real soft. And if I want to wipe this off, I can just take a wet paper towel or wet cloth and I can just wipe this away. All right? So over the next few minutes here, I'm going to go around and I'm going to trace. I don't need to trace everything. I only care about the outside, right? Because I'm printing the whole thing in yellow first. So, but I am going to save this drawing because this drawing is going to act as my setup sheet every single time I do this. And more on that later. All right, so I'm going to go around and trace my silhouette. All right? Okay. So now you can see that the image, the silhouette of everything is on the screen. This is going to be the first thing that we use the screen filler on, and we're going to paint out everything here with the drawing fluid, and then we're going to coat everything else with the screen filler, and then we're going to wash out the drawing fluid. Okay, so that'll be my next step. Okay, so now is the part where we're going to use the drawing fluid and draw out the silhouette of the entire image. Now, what you need to do first is you have to elevate the screen. So I'm using some boards to elevate it off my surface, my drawing table, because if it was, we're gonna be drawing with a fluid, and if this was sitting on a flat surface, some of that fluid's going to seep through, and then when you go to pull up your screen, you're going to have a mess. So you want to have your screen elevated up, you know, an inch or two. It's fine. It's sturdy. So we're going to be drawing with the drawing fluid. I gave you guys a cup to work with, right? I'm just going to work out of the grody can that I have. You'll need to stir up your drawing fluid before you start working. So just give it a stir with something, whatever you have, a spoon, butter knife. Also, you want to have some kind of a damp cloth in case you make a mistake, because you can easily, like, let's see, I'll grab a little bit here just to show you. When you paint onto the screen, you want to go really light and you want to keep everything really nice and flat. But let's say I'm doing this and I make a mistake. As long as you don't allow it to, well, even if it does dry, you can still wipe it off because it's water soluble. So if I need to wipe this off, I can go over and just wipe it. This side, I can pick this up and wipe it from underneath. But I have to let this dry first, because if I use the drawing fluid over, it's going to dissolve it. So just a brief description of the drawing fluid method is this is water soluble. So when we paint that onto the screen first, when that dries, we're going to coat the screen with a filler that is not water soluble. So then we're going to go, after we have this covered with the screen filler and it's dry, we're going to use warm water and we're going to wash this stuff out, and that's going to create our stencil. So it's pretty straightforward. It's a pretty archaic way of making screen prints, and it's perfect for doing this kind of stuff at home. And you can really lean into the process, and you can get some pretty interesting results that you might not have come up with had you done, you know, a Photoshop image or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to begin painting now, and like I said, you don't want to go too thick with this. So I'm going to follow around one of the edges here. You want to paint this on, like I said, relatively thin. What you want to avoid, for the most part, I'll just pour some out here. Just pour some out. What you really want to avoid is going way heavy, making little puddles. See this? You want to avoid this. And the reason why is because it's going to seep through on the bottom, or it'll dry and it'll create a bubble. And when we go to squeegee our screen filler over this, it's gonna stutter and it's gonna mess with our finish. So we want to keep everything nice and flat. So let's say I put down too much at once, I can just push this around. I can push this off. I can even, you know, go on a paper towel and pick some of this off. Now let me show you what it's doing to the other side of the screen. It's flat on this side of the surface, but what I've done now is I pushed it to the other side of the screen. So there might be times where you have to lift your screen up, flip it over, see that puddle, and then flatten that out too. And what this is doing, the drawing fluid, is it's basically just plugging up the screen temporarily. Okay? So I'm going to go around this whole thing right now. So you're about to see a time lapse, okay? Starting right about now. Okay, so this is all dry. It should feel maybe a little sticky, a little tacky, but this is pretty much dry, and you want to make sure that this is dry before you do this next stage. So give it some time. You can put a blow dryer on it. Use a blow dryer. Just make sure you're keeping about, 7 or 8 inches away, blow drying it. So I gave you guys some chipboard, right? And I have a piece of mat board here that I'm going to use. But I have this cut to the size of my image. See, it's going to overlap. And I'm going to use this as my squeegee to push the screen filler over the image to the other side. Okay? I want to try to get this in one shot because there's a water content, there's water inside the screen filler, and this stuff dissolves with water. So I don't want to leave any of that. I don't want it to keep going over this and over this multiple times, because every time I do that, it's breaking this down more and more. So I want to get across one time. Second is I want to have some small pieces cut. Because when I get it over here, I'm going to use the rest and I'm going to spread it out to the edges. I'm going to cover this from corner to corner with screen filler. And then I got to get that excess out and back into the can. I gave you guys a cup, so it'll just go right back into the cup. This is one of the trickiest parts to this whole process, because if you use too much filler, you're going to have a mess. If you use too little, you're not going to cover across. So I only need enough filler to go around this edge. So it's not going to be filling this, so I don't need a whole lot. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and push ahead here. So I'm going to shake my can up. You'll want to stir yours a little bit. Now I'm going to pour a bead right across here, okay? So I've already mentally prepared myself for this, and I told you how I'm going to do it. So I'm going to pour a bead. I guess I don't need a whole lot. So that should be good. That's probably more than enough. We'll see. All right. I'll take this. And I'm kind of bending this a little bit. I'm just trying to make good contact. Okay, here we go. Okay, looks pretty good. I'm gonna go back in the can. I want to make sure that you're not bringing this over the image. I don't want this stuff pouring back onto the screen. Alright, just putting it back in the can. See, like that. You don't want that. That's fine. It's not gonna... Let me probably get that little piece off, piece of junk. Here we go. So I'll put this over here, and then I'm gonna take that card and all this excess. Oh, and by the way, I'm still elevated. The screen is still elevated off the table. I'm gonna take this card and I'm gonna push this away from the imagery. See the angle that I'm going at? See, I'm going like this. And I'm pushing to the edge. Start getting some of this excess back in the can. I said be careful you don't drip this stuff back over your image. So I used a pretty good amount. I got all the way around the screen. I don't have too much to go back in the can. But like I said, if you use too much, man, you're gonna have a mess. You're gonna have a hard time shoveling all this stuff back up. So let's say you do mess it up and you keep going, like you didn't get it the first time, and then you try it a second time. After 2 times of going over it, you're kind of breaking this down too much. You might have to start over. This stuff, when it dries, it's very difficult to get off the screen. You'll have to have a pressure washer. So let's say if you do make a mistake, and I made a mess of this. Let's say I did this and it just totally failed on me. You want to get this screen before it dries. You know, you got a good few minutes. You want to get it, I don't know, to a sink or take it outside and spray it all off, and then you can do this whole process again. Your imagery that you choose to put on the screen, I want to keep this in mind. I want to keep the process in mind. I want to use this process for its strengths and not point out its weaknesses. What is this process good at? It's good at really really bold graphic kind of things. It's probably not the best for like super fine lines. Not to say that that can't be done, but this process is good for bold graphic imagery. So that's why I picked an image that was kind of appropriate. I knew that this would work with, and I suggest you do the same thing when you do your imagery. Like I said, you guys can send me your ideas and I can tell you how to approach it. But just when you're sketching before you do this, just keep that in mind, this whole process that you're going to be doing. Okay? This is good for when you're okay with unpredictability. Slight unpredictability. Okay. So I could put a blow dryer on this and speed up the process. I might even go over to the back and make sure I don't have any huge puddles. So it looks okay. I might squeegee this out a little bit more. Wipe it just a little more. I want to make sure that I'm blocking it, that this material is blocking out the light. See how it's blocking out the light? Same thing with this. Before I did this, I looked at this the screen filler. I looked at it through the light and made sure it was plugging up the screen. And this is plugging up the screen. I can always go back with a brush and paint in any little mistakes or any little pieces that might not have been covered. But so far it looks like we're covered. So I just gotta let this dry, and then I'm gonna show you how to wash it out, okay? Okay, we're back. So this is dry. You'll know when it's dry. It's really dull. So I have a paper towel, which is soaked with warm water. And then I need to have another paper towel. Fold it up and ready to go, because I'm gonna use this to kind of vacuum out the screen. So I need to have this and this. So I'm gonna be pretty generous with the water. I can just let this sit for a second, let it do what it's going to do. It's slowly breaking down that material. All right. You can see it's already coming off. I'm going to flip the screen. Do the same thing on this side. Try to keep this flat. If there's any stubborn parts, you can hold the screen up a little bit. See how I'm pushing the back here? Do that. So I don't know if you can see this, but you'll see like there's some a couple little spots, like these little bitty bits in here. I'm not worried about that. That was just where there's a little bit of spots that were a little thin when I used the drawing fluid, and that's what's picking those up. I mean, a lot of them are coming out, but you might have little bits that remain, some artifacts. And what I was saying earlier about why I picked the imagery that I picked, because I know that this is, it's kind of finicky, but it's not really finicky. It's just, it's not going to be as sharp and as clean if I was using an exposure unit with films and so forth. And like I said, not that this can't be, but in the time frame that I have you work in and what I want to achieve, what I want you to achieve with your prints and what I'm trying to achieve with my prints, this is going to be perfect. All right, so edges look pretty sharp, looks pretty nice. Take my dry, and dry this out. And I'm ready to print. Okay, so this next step is setting up your registration. Screen's ready to go. I need to figure out my placement of my paper. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking, I can still see through the screen. I can see, I'm trying to balance my image on the paper. So it looks pretty good where I had it. Okay, you want to move it around so the placement's where you want it on the paper that you're printing on. And then I'm just going to use some of the same paper that I'm printing on, and I'm going to use this for my registration. So all my paper is cut to the same size, and that's important. And I also made sure that the edges are squared so that when I print, and you'll see, let me just take down my registration tabs. Get one strip of tape on here. Of course, everything we talked about in class applies to everything that we're doing here. And this isn't the only way to do what we're doing. It's just one way, one strategy. Okay. So I'm going to use this as my registration. So when I come in, I'm going to bring my paper up to this, make sure it's flush, and then I'm going to push it over to make sure it's flush with this one. And every single time I put my paper in, I'm going to do that same motion every single time. The whole thing about printmaking is always consistency and noticing slight differences and knowing when you need to tweak something and then making those adjustments and then staying consistent with those adjustments. Okay? So I'm going to come in, paper down to the edge like that. Put this down, print. So make sure these are really taped down so they don't move on you, because if they move on you, then this whole thing is kind of not going to work. All right. Okay, so I'm ready to print now. I've got my paper cut, got my screen ready, got my registration set up, I got my color mixed, I've got my squeegee. I want to make sure that my image is going to fit within the parameters of the squeegee. Now my image is a tight fit, okay, so I got to kind of keep that in mind when I'm pulling my prints. For the sake of this demo and just my setup, I'm going to continue, but if I was you, or let's say I was doing this and not for a video, then I'd probably go this way. But I can manage and make do with what I have right here. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. Put my ink down. I'm going to take your squeegee, kind of get it greased up here. I'm going to hold this up and we're going to flood the screen. Okay. You also need something to hold your screen up with. I'm going to use just a roll of tape roll. Okay. Get my paper in there. So my paper's in, as you can see, it's ready to go. And I'm just going to start printing and I'm going to speed this up. Now over to the side, an area that you can't see, I've got a little table space that I'm going to be putting my prints, because you got to think about where are my wet prints going to go. Okay, so you got to kind of think everything through. You can't, I'll show you, you'll see at the beginning of the video, or as I showed you at the beginning of the video, the tight quarters that I'm working in. Okay? All right, here we go. Print. I'll show you this mistake. sometimes the paper will stick to the back of the screen. It's important that you make sure that the print has fallen off, or you push the print down. I didn't do that, so I made that mistake. But that's okay. I think I can pat this down and still work with it. But I'm going to be mindful of that going forward. So this time, I'm gonna make sure I look under the screen and make sure that's coming off. There we go. So what I might do now is I might put down a little piece of tape on my registration jig to hold the paper down. It's all trial and error, right? Trial and error. Tape. Put a piece of tape here. Maybe I'll put another piece of tape on the other corner, and I can just kind of tuck my paper into those spots. Okay. What I'm going to do now is take this off, See? Good to go. It's going to take you a while to get your rhythm. It's definitely taken me a little time to get my rhythm, so. So I'm with you. You're usually used to having a lot more space to work. So that's it. I'm doing a very small run. Very small run. So that one print that I messed up on, this one, the one that stuck to the screen, this one's probably going to be the one that I run first when I do my next color, so then I can use it as like my starter. Now when you do your prints, I'm only doing like 6 or 7 here. I think I got 6, yeah, I got 6 going. So you're going to be doing, I want you to have 10 good prints, so maybe you should start at like 13, 14. This is a color reduction, so you can't go back. It's all or nothing, basically. So you want to start with more because you're going to have some duds like this one in the process. Okay? And clean up now. Before I go into my time lapse here, make sure that when you put the screen on the registration board that you really make sure that these clamps are nice and tight, because you don't want your screen to come loose, because then that'll mess you up too. Okay. Okay, so I'm ready to move on to the next step. So I'm gonna take my drawing. Move this so you can see a little bit. There we go. I'm basically going to line this back up. Line this back up. So my image is a little loose, meaning I got a little wiggle room in here, keeping the process in mind. Alright, I'm just going to tape this onto the screen. And the reason I'm doing this is so I can do this, so I can retrace my next color. Retrace my next color. Okay, so I got this figured out. I'm going to draw in the bits where I want the yellow to show through. I'm going to keep it a little bit further away from the spider, as I noticed a little bit of a design flaw in the way that I'm doing this, so I'm going to adjust. And that's not important for you to know, but the only thing you need to know is you just need to draw out where you want that yellow to stay. Okay, so I'm going to have all these little, move this up a little bit. I'm going to have all these little explosion particle effects kind of going on. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do something a little different this time. Instead of going over with the drawing fluid again, because this is, I'm keeping this drawing pretty loose. Keeping this pretty loose, this drawing, this print. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to use the actual screen filler and paint these areas in. And everywhere that I paint, everywhere I put the screen filler in, that's where the yellow is going to show through, okay? So, I'm going to take this off. I still have my drawing guidelines to go with. I'm going to take the filler and I'm going to start painting that in. When you paint on the filler, it's just as important to keep it really nice and smooth. Keep it flat. Try not to mound it up, because what happens is we're going to be pulling our squeegee over it and we don't want our squeegee stuttering on this. So keep this really nice and flat. Sometimes you got to hit it a couple times. So I'm going to put a little bit of this in here and just paint the filler on. Sometimes it's easier to just put the drawing fluid on and do it that way, and sometimes it's easier just to paint it on. In this case, it's just going to be easier to paint it. Okay, so this is dry. I didn't remove my screen from the registration jig because I want to keep my registration all the same. So I don't have to move this screen at all through the whole process. So I don't have to reset up my registration. I'm already good to go. So let's put on the next color. I'm going to go with red. Registration's going in the same way as always. I'm going to tape down the corner so it doesn't stick. Probably should have flooded this, but it's alright. It's already down there now, so it's fine. Squeegee, think I'm ready? Okay, so I'm back set up to trace again so I can paint out the next color. So everything that I paint out now is, you know, we already know the yellow is going to show through no matter what because it's already blocked out on the screen. Everywhere that I block out now is going to allow the red to show through. Okay, I'm still not touching the spider yet because it's the last element. Now, like I said, you should be open-minded when you're working in this way, because I realized, oh man, I already painted over a little bit of this this leg here, which is a mistake, but I'm just going to embrace it. Also, I might have done this in a little bit different order now thinking about it, because I want to make sure I get a really nice sharp edge that I haven't really drawn yet. See how I drew it down here for the feet? The spider's going to have that going all the way around. So I kind of did things a little bit. If I had to do this again, I'd probably do it in a little bit different order. But, you know, woulda, coulda, shoulda, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna embrace it and lean into it. So it's kind of good you're seeing this process of me working through things, because this is how I work through everything. You know, I never go into anything with thinking like, oh, this is what the outcome has to be. I go in with a little bit of an idea, then work through it, and, you know, what happens, happens. So now I just want to make sure I don't go too close to the spider. So that's really the only thing that I need to make a mental note of, is where that spider is and how much room I have around the spider. I probably should have done this on the other one the last time I did this, but I didn't think of it, right? And that's okay, not a big deal. So you can see here, trace back on, I have my little guidelines to go by, and everything else is fair game. I want this to look like, you know, this thing is dynamic and, you know, really bursting, you know, a bursting flame. So again, I'm not going to use the screen filler. I'm just going to use the, I'm sorry, not going to use, I am going to use the screen filler. I'm not going to use the drawing fluid. I am going to use the drawing fluid on the last step, but we'll get there. So again, crack this open. Pouring a little bit out. Oh, a couple things I got to mention again. I forget to, see, this is how these are going to go. I'm going to forget to say stuff, and then that's why you're watching the whole video before you get started. Make sure you're washing your brushes out when you work, because if this dries in your brush, it's hard to wash out. It'll wash out with some warm soap and water. Just make sure you're keeping your brushes clean, okay? All right, here we go. All right, gonna lay down some blue on this next one, okay? So I got my color all ready to go. Put my print in just like I normally would. Left, down, over to the left. Tape this down again because that's been working out for me. Okay, let's hold this up. Hold this up to flood. There we go. See how this looks. It's pretty cool. I'm liking it. See that? Let me lower this a little bit. So everywhere that I just painted in is allowing that red and yellow to show through. Okay. It's a little wilder than I wanted, but you know, I'll take it. Right? Okay. Okay, coming into the final stretch here. Just got to address this got to address the tarantula. Okay. Sorry, I guess I wasn't recording that last part. Anyways, I just coated this again with the screen filler, so the only thing that's left is now the tarantula. Okay. A couple of the splatter effects that I threw in there using the drawing fluid. So that's that. Gotta let this dry, and then I'm gonna clean it out, and then I'm gonna print my last color. See how it comes out. I get a little, it comes out, you know, things when you print, it's either going to come out way better than you thought, or it's just not going to live up to what your expectations were. And that's fine. What's nice is I can hand embellish these. I can do something else. I can print something on top. There's really nothing can go to waste. I'm going to keep using things. But hopefully the print just comes out like perfect. Grungy. I'm digging it though. I don't know whether you can see it. I'll show you this way. Put this down a little bit. Take a look at it. Looks pretty good. I tried to have some of these colors overlapped in these two legs. See, you know, at any point, if there's something I just really don't like, man, I can just go back in with a little bit of ink and just be like, bam, knock that out. I can hand embellish, I can curate my prints to a point. You know, most people don't teach their students how to do this, but everybody does it. Everybody touches up their prints to some extent. So I can touch some of this stuff up, make it look a little cleaner. So, you know, see like those areas where the blue is coming through right there. Just patch that up. And I might do that. I don't really like this yellow showing through like that. It doesn't look like it's reading over. It looks like it's just a mistake. Sometimes if it looks cool, it looks cool. Sometimes things don't look cool. Just paint it in. See? So I think I'm just going to touch everything up a little bit on this one. And when I do that, I'm going to be, you paint in the ink, it's going to be a little bit different finish than the actual print. So the best way to fix that is if you do any touch-ups, spot touch-ups, you just want to make sure you go really, really light and try not to have the ink overlap the dried ink too much. Because it'll have a little bit different finish than what's on the actual print. So what I do is if I touch up anything, whether it's on a silkscreen or it's a woodcut print, lino cut, what I do is after I get done painting it in, instead of letting it dry, because if it dries it creates maybe like a little mound, I'll just take a piece of newsprint or a piece of paper like this, I'll put it over the top, and then I'll just pull that excess ink off. Like this. See, there's a little bit of ink in there. And that'll just help blend it in. And most people won't be able to pick up on it at all. Okay? So I'm going to do that with this one all the way around. Like I said, I only have, now like I said, if I was doing 15, 20 of these or so, I would probably just take another piece of another screen, just block out a little part, and then I would draw in where I need the ink to go, and then I'd probably draw the whole spider again and then just print over it, you know, if it bugged me that bad. Or I could find some other way of resolving the image. But like I said, it looks cool like it is now. It still reads as a spider, and it reads like this could be like little bits of that fire going over the top of it. It's just personal preference. So I'll show you this when it's all finished, and then you'll be ready to go on your own design. Okay? All right. So I just touched up everything, blotted everything down, you know. Print is finished, ready to go. So nothing left to do now but just sign it, edition it. I lost one print, so I got 5 of these, 5 decent ones. Well, let me see. I'm gonna say I got 4 and an artist proof. Okay, so 1/4. There you go. It's finished print. Alright, so have fun. Email me if you have any questions, and I look forward to seeing your prints. Till next time.